Blair and Starmer are conspiring to bring even more migrants to the United Kingdom. What you've seen in the past 24 hours, 48 hours, a couple of last week, is actually not true. Yes, I get that the mainstream media have talked a little bit about some of the issues, whether it be NI for Indian people, I'll explain that for those of you who haven't watched, whether it be the youth travel scheme for the EU, I'll explain that if it's not been introduced to you, or the European Convention on Human Rights, any of these things. But let me tell you, they're all in it together because mass migration is British government policy and it doesn't matter what gets said. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, hit the bell notification icon and also wait to the end when I explain more about the Patriot Fund. Really need your help and things are going well. Okay, look, I'm going to say to you more than anything else, when I worked in journalism, I was lazy like everybody else. The reality is what you have to do as a journalist is churn lots of stories very, very quickly. And the old days of really digging into things actually are in the past. Now, that's a great and a sad thing. And I have to say, I would love us, and I know this is going to be controversial, I would love us to offer state subsidies to local journalism in the way that perhaps we did in the past, but people more recently have been unhappy with. But anyway, that's a slightly separate issue to this. Tony Blair is the political father of Kier Starmer. I don't think anybody can have any of that in doubt. But what has happened is Kier Starmer has sought to lie to the public in order to get into political office. I remember Margaret Thatcher once said of Neil Kinnock, she said, "I never believed that Neil Kinnock was a decent or honourable or honest man because it was a fundamentally dishonest endeavour." And she said, the purpose of Neil Kinnock's reforms was to pretend to the public that the Labour Party had changed when it had not changed at all. Well, Blair definitely changed the Labour Party. He changed it into a body that was interested in quangocracy, interested in Europeanism, interested in internationalism, a body that would never ever look after ordinary working people again. And it falls to me. Honestly, I'm not joking. Yes, my dad was an electrical engineer. Yes, my mum grew up in a working class district of Liverpool. But at the same time, my mum went to private school and my dad ended up as one of the bosses of one of the biggest companies in the United Kingdom. I went to private school and it falls to right-wingers and privileged people like us to actually defend our working class patriotic brethren. Happy to do that. That's why nobody has a problem with Nigel Farage, Rupert Lowe or any of these people, because as long as you're patriotic, it's good to go. But what have they done, Blair and Starmer, this week? Well, today there was the announcement of the Indian NI scheme. On the face of it, not a particularly bad thing to do, because we all know that national insurance has been a nightmare and cost us a fortune. So in this video, let me just be clear, I'm not defending national insurance. I think it's dreadful. But now, Indian migrants that come to the United Kingdom will not have to pay national insurance, nor will their employers for 3 years. Now, that makes it even easier to employ Indians, nothing wrong with that, but critically harder to employ English people. Now, conversely, if you go and get a job in India, you don't have to pay NI either. But how many people actually do that? Now, there are some people like British Telecom employ people in India simply because of call centres and all that. And I worked for a company in Salford that did as well. So there are some people, but I think we can all agree there aren't many of them. So once again, easier to come to the United Kingdom. Now we have a leaked document that's been in the press today where Kier Starmer has said that he wants to allow the European Convention on Human Rights to continue. That is a draft agreement ahead of his summit with the European Union in about 10 days' time. It's now a couple of weeks, 10 days, whatever it is. But they're going to announce that the European Convention on Human Rights is a central pillar of both the UK and the EU relationship. And what is the central benefit to the left of the European Convention on Human Rights? Well, in reality, it's that migrants are able to stay in the United Kingdom. Our ability to deport has disappeared as a result of that. Well, now, what is next? The Youth Mobility Scheme. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing before we go any further. I did not vote to leave the European Union. I've said this before. I did not vote to leave the European Union because I objected to free movement. I'll explain my objection. My objection was very simply this. countries came into the EU that were plainly going to become quite rich when they lost the shackles of communism. Places like Poland, places like Slovenia, places like Czech Republic. Okay, no problem. And in fact, they are now comparatively rich. Poland in particular, by the way. But what we allowed was we allowed people to come in immediately after they joined the EU. Now, frankly, free movement among similarly wealthy countries, all in Europe, all with a similar immigration policy, I have no problem with. Now, there are caveats within that. So, a youth mobility scheme, I'm not fundamentally ideologically against, but I'll tell you why I'm against it. Because what the EU will present this as is, oh, lots of young people coming over from France, Germany, Belgium, Spain. No, 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 no. They'll just offload the Syrians, they'll offload the Somalians, they'll offload the Eritreans, they'll offload all of these migrants, because what they'll do is these guys have all come age 20, they'll give them citizenship to the EU age 24 and send them all to Britain. And so once again, we're in the same position that we've always been in, that Blair and Starmer and the EU have conspired to change our country. I'm going to stand up and say something once again to you. Honestly, we have to start talking about culture. Grab my pearls, I'm so offended. Look, I've said this before, and for regular viewers, you will have seen this lots of times. You know, when my grandmother came over from Belfast, obviously she was not from GB, but she was from the United Kingdom. Being Irish was quite easy to integrate into Liverpool, phenomenally easy, similar language, similar culture. They even had her favourite type, I can't say this. They even had her favourite type of sectarianism available in Liverpool. I'll get into trouble for saying that. But when my, compose yourself. But when my grandmother came from Greece, obviously it was harder because she didn't have the language. Then if you come from Pakistan, you come from Eritrea, you come from Mongolia, it becomes harder still. And we've got to be able to say that we are willing to stand up for our culture and we're going to defend our culture. And multiculturalism is not a great thing. I've said this before. Once again, I'm being repetitious. In my fridge at the moment, I have my favourite foods. Chocolate cake, I have a beer, I have vodka, I have water, I have grapes, I have cherries, I have all of the things that you would normally have. And each of those foods are something I enjoy. Curry. It's not true to say that you would improve all of those foods if you put them in one big blender and mashed them together and stuck them on your plate. That is what we're doing with culture. Actually, our high streets are not any different to anywhere else in the world anymore. And we need to make our place and our country unique. So I think that what we now have to do is say to ourselves, very simply, Kier Starmer and Tony Blair are the enemy. They are continuing with uncontrolled immigration. Don't believe them when they say this deal with India is all about economics between Britain and India, which, by the way, we should be doing. Do not believe them that the European Convention on Human Rights is all to do with protecting citizens from the rise of fascism in Europe. What a load of old crap. And do not believe that when we start to bring in this youth scheme that you're going to get Fritz and Hans, the incredibly good-looking Krauts. We're not going to get those. You're not going to get all the nice-looking Eastern Europeans that you're hoping for. I guarantee if you're watching this video and you're hoping for a nice little Swedish bird or a nice little Estonian girl to come over for your son or your daughter, I guess, nowadays, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to offload Iqbal and his chums to the United Kingdom, and that is going to be phenomenally dangerous, and we need to oppose all of it. So, in summary, the mainstream media has completely ignored the fundamentals behind all these issues. Immigration is still rife and it's out of control. And now I want to tell you a little bit about the Patriot Fund. We're raising money every single month for patriotic causes. I'm very happy to send you the update for month 1 and month 2. Please, 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 the link is in the description to give your donation. Once you do that, more importantly than donation, is actually to get your email address. And at the end of every month, what I do is I collate those, send out the email to your address, and then we start to build something up. Now, are we making a fortune off the Patriot Fund? No, we're not. But just here and there, we're doing little things. Caught the Gloucester Perv, camera scheme for young people who want to get involved in social media on the right, going out to see migrant hotels, supporting some political activists. We can't be party political because that means we'd have to register with the Electoral Commission, but we're starting to do this work. Really appreciate your help and support. Until next time, goodbye.